Okay, hello and welcome back to the Right Brain Podcast.
Hey,
We are here in Nashville, Tennessee,
midst of a tornado.
in the midst of a tornado. Yeah, my parents, now they come down like once a month now to film these shows. And yeah, we filmed yesterday, and then on the way back, things got a little dicey. And then we got into their hotel and they made us hide in like the back basement of the hotel.
Yeah.
They did give us free beer though, so that was cool.
That's true.
And that's all that matters.
Yes. And the thing is, we thought we missed the tornado that was here just like 2 days or 3 days ago.
Yeah.
And then we came down and there was another tornado that we got hit by somewhat.
Yeah. But I always say, because I'm from New York, that I don't believe in tornadoes because we never had them. And I'm pretty sure that whatever you believe your reality to be is what it actually is, which leads us into the fact that we're going to be talking about manifestation
Good
today.
segue, Ellis. Good segue. That was really
Wow.
good.
You only call me Ellis when you're really proud of me.
I
So
didn't
that
even
was good.
see that coming. That was good.
Normally it's just Ellie.
That's true.
Okay, so basically my dad has been my entire life, like, I feel like manifestation has become a much more popular subject, like, I don't know, in the past like 5 years maybe. Just I feel like it's talked about more like online and everything. But having him as my dad my whole life, he's been like trying to drill this into my brain for years. I think it started to really like pick up in my head maybe like after college. I really understood it, but it also plays into a lot of like your confidence and what you believe can happen. But I have seen real things that I have very specifically manifested happen. So I believe in it deeply, but there's certainly a special process to it. And it has a lot to do with your brain in many ways.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I always like to look at it in neuroscience in terms of physics and kind of combine those things together. But yeah, I think with me, it started a lot from being an athlete as a kid and realizing that you needed to prepare, that you couldn't just like wing things. Like you didn't go into a game unprepared and expect that you were going to be great, you know? And I think that kind of gave me the idea that life was like that there had to be a little bit more to life than just if you wanted things to happen, that you needed to kind of go into it and develop some sort of a game plan, like in sports. And so I think that's where I started just reaching out and reading books and listening to a lot of tapes about, positive, motivational stuff. And then naturally, as I went down the road and started also studying physics at a really high level and neuroscience at a really high level, a lot of that stuff started to come together. And it's just, I think it's just such a cool, fascinating topic. But I've also, at a certain point, when you do it enough, when you write stuff down, when you actually plan for certain things, and they show up over and over and over and over again, then you start to realize this isn't just a mistake. This isn't just luck. It isn't just coincidence. And that's the thing. I think if it all comes to me, when people talk about manifestation, it's the idea that everything in your reality, everything in your life, you create with your own mind. And when you come to that realization, then you stop thinking of yourself as a victim. You start thinking of yourself as, I wish, I hope. If you actually realize that you create it, then you also take responsibility for any of the bad things in your life, and you realize that you create them somehow too. And then you start looking at, how that might be. And a lot of it comes from that you're not planning in advance. You're just you're waiting for things to happen. You're procrastinating. You're putting things off. You're hoping, you're wishing, but you're not doing anything. And, and things come back to bite you in the butt if you don't deal with them. So, yeah. So for me, manifestation starts with the fact that if you come to the realization that everything in your life you created somehow, even going back to relatively early childhood, I mean, not babies and stuff like that, but young childhood, you start to create those things. And
Well, you
and
made me
that's
write
where,
my goals down when I was 6 years old.
exactly right. That's true. So baby childhood. Yeah. And that's what I say to parents. It's, kids, when they're young, they're so easy to trick because they're really dumb. But no, they're just so innocent and believing and everything. But that's when kids believe that, they can do magic and that everything can happen, and they believe in all possibilities. And I think that's a very right brain type of way of looking at the world.
Yeah.
In this kind of open, anything can happen, type of thing, like where you believe that it can happen. And so one of the things I would do with you guys when you were little is the idea of writing things down, because that's also such a key part of manifesting, is how you say it, the conversations in your head, the way you go about it matter. It's not just a matter of just, I'm going to make a wish and wishes come true. But if you can give a little child like a book and say to them, this is a magic book, that whatever you write in this, and really write and actually feel it, is going to come true. And I tell it to parents, and a lot of parents have come to me and said, that was so great. I did that with my child. And you're not lying to them, because the fact is, I believe that's true. If a child writes it down, if they believe it and they actually see it and get the feeling of it, it will come true. And I believe that's what happened to you when we were 6 years old, that literally we had that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really fun. He was like, what are all the things you want? And I was like, you said that. I was like, I can write anything I want. You're
Right.
like, yeah, anything can happen. And I feel like that was like the mindset that you really gave us for a long time. But I've definitely implemented it now in so many of the things that have happened. And you've always said the more specific that you are about things, the clearer they'll come to you. But what do you think how do you think manifestation applies to right brain and left brain people?
Yeah, well, I think you need to ideally use both. For me, when you're creating a plan, when you're creating, first of all, again, starts with the idea that, okay, I take responsibility for my life. And then you start thinking about, I talk about with you guys the system I kind of adopted, which was an amalgamation of many different people that just worked for me, was really three simple questions. What do I want? And that seems so simple, but that is the one thing that, I'll give you an example. I got picked up in an Uber by a young man. I was in Atlanta. He was a, nice young man. And we were driving along, and he was talking about different things, and he was very friendly. And I asked him, what he did. And he said that he had some job, or he just lost his job, and that's why he was doing an Uber. And then he said to me, my problem is I look too young. Nobody takes me seriously because I have a young look about me. And the guy was probably 33, 34, something like that. And he said, and my mom used to say the same thing, that, no one would take her young because she looked, take her serious because she looked so young. And it's like a problem in our family. And that was, the reason. And basically saying that's the reason he got fired, right? And I was in a mood where I just was usually I'd be polite and I'd say, yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah, and I just looked at him, and I looked at him, and he looked at me in the mirror, and I said, that's a whole bullshit story right there, right?
Oh my gosh.
And he looked at me and he goes, what? I said, yeah, that's a story you just made up in your head, but that's complete bullshit. I mean, I have a lot of people that tell me that they can't get a job because they look too old. That right now they're only hiring young people, and they don't want old people anymore. And that, a lot of people say youth is power, and, a lot of people would kill to look younger than they are. So I don't really get that I think that's a bullshit reason, to be honest with you. And I think you kind of got that from your mom because she taught that to you, but you've been using it as an excuse. And he looked at me, he goes, because he was kind of in shock that I was that, and I said it in a polite way, but I was just like, that doesn't. And he looked at me and he goes, really? I said, okay, just answer me one question. What kind of job do you want? And he looked at me and he said, I don't know. I said, that's your problem. It's not that you look too young. You don't know what the hell you want.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he went, yeah, maybe you're right. And then he said, I do what kind of job I want, but I'm kind of afraid to ask for that, right? I'm like, right. And I said, there again, that's your problem. If you know what you want, have you ever written it down? Do you have a specific plan? Do you know? And he was like, no. So that's like kind of the 3 steps. What do you want? Most people can't answer that question. If you just ask people that question, I think we may have talked about it, but I like to be at parties and listen to people. And most people at parties a lot, especially when they get older, they kind of tend to bitch and moan about things and complain about things. And, I hate my job or I hate my boss or, my wife or my girlfriend or my husband. And every once in a while, I just like to look at them and go, what do you want? And they look at you like, what? Kind of like you did when you were a little kid. Like, wait, I can say anything that I want. But their answer is almost always the same. And it's, I don't know what I want. I don't know. And then they'll usually really quickly about the same situation say, but I know what I don't want, which means that what are they focusing on? Because that's another key to manifestation. Whatever you focus on, if you start with the supposition that you create your reality, then whatever you're focusing on, you create. And most people, what do you think they focus on? Do you think they focus on what they want or what they're afraid of?
Yeah. I think what they're afraid of.
Yes. And part of that is neurological. So go back to the question about the right brain, left brain thing. The way our right brain works, we've talked about this, is it came online first and it always engages the world first. So its first sense is to look for danger, right? Because first and foremost, we need to survive. So right away, it's looking, where is danger going to come? It's looking for, it's got an open attention and it's looking for anything new or novel that we haven't seen before because that could be potentially dangerous. But when you first wake up in the morning, if you don't do anything and you just let your brain just kind of do whatever it's going to do, the first thing that's going to happen is your right brain is going to wake up and go, okay, where's the danger today? And it's going to look for that. And it's going to look for, where is it? And then your focus goes there. And then your focus stays there. And then today, you look at news, you look at anything, everything is designed to keep us in this state of focusing on fear and danger and what's bad. And if you just, watch social media or TV or mainstream media or whatever, it's going to take you there. You watch your feed on social media. And if you look at it, most of it is a lot of it's going to be stuff that you are angry with or
just like fear tactics.
Yeah. And so you're going to go there. And your right brain's just going to take you there and it's going to stay there. And then you're going to focus on that. And then you literally draw it into your life. That's the way it happens. You resonate with it. There's some scientific, literature out there to say that when you look at resonance of frequency, so the frequency of your emotions resonates a frequency from your body and literally, creates a frequency around you and then starts attracting your frequency there within like 17 seconds.
Wow.
And then the more you focus on that, you just keep on resetting that 17 seconds. And then when you get to like 68 seconds, it literally starts to grow momentum and it gets bigger and bigger. So the bottom line is that, you have to be able to shift your focus consciously. Like you can't just think, oh, it's just going to happen. Or, people say to me, I don't want to think about it. I just want to be spontaneous in life. I don't want to have to plan everything in my life. And I say, okay, if you do that, that's good. Or they say, I don't really believe in manifestation. And I said, it's going to happen whether you believe it or not. It's happening.
Yeah, you're constantly manifesting whatever whatever your mindset is the most is. But I was thinking also because when I was in acting school, which was a lot of also right brain people, because like the entire time you're trying to draw from everyone's emotions and it's just a lot of very sensitive people. But the most important thing about acting school was to be able to learn how to like really live out every emotion. So like you get a role and you're angry, you have to take yourself back to a place where you were super angry and you have to live that out and everything. And the hardest emotion for everyone to act out, like no one could do it, was happiness.
Oh wow.
And it was really shocking. And anytime I ever tell anyone that, they're like, no way. But it was crazy to watch. No one could do it. And I remember my friend Nicole just like breaking down in front of the entire class because she was given this role where she was supposed to like, all of her dreams just came true and she needed to act that out, and she couldn't do it and she lost it. And I didn't see one person successfully pull it off, but it was all because we were all in there trying so hard to make our dreams come true. And the thought of giving ourselves permission to feel what that would feel like without it actually happening yet was like impossible. Because like, you know, in manifestation, like you always told me, you're supposed to live in that state and then it will, you know, those things will come to you. Like you think about the award you want and you already have it and what that feeling would be like. But watching everyone try to give themselves permission of that, they were like, they just didn't think they deserved it and they couldn't do it. And I struggled with it as well, you know?
That's fascinating. You never told me that story before, but that makes so much sense. But it's so interesting because I never heard that before. But now that you say it, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Because, you know, that as very right brain dominant person, one of the things that people with right brain dominance struggle with is the idea of worthiness, of feeling worthy, of, you know, having self-esteem issues or imposter syndrome, as we talked about.
Yeah.
And they want things so badly, and that's one of the things about manifestation that, you know, I think if we look at you create your own reality. Whatever you focus on is what your life looks like. And you're either focusing on what you're afraid of or you're focusing on what you want. But to really manifest something, you have to live in the end result. Mm-hmm. You have to literally be there. You have to, and it's a whole different mentality. We were talking about that yesterday. Like if let's say you dream that you want to win the Grammy, mm-hmm. and you're thinking about that and you're saying, okay, someday I'm going to win the Grammy or whatever, then you're literally manifesting that. But what you're manifesting
someday
is someday.
Yeah.
And so you're literally manifesting that delay in time. And the feeling that you have is kind of like hopeful, wishing, as opposed to expectancy or already having it.
Yeah, I am. Those are the words you're supposed to use, right? Or I have, or
yeah. So that, like, if you're winning, if you have an award, you have it in your hand, the feeling you have, you're not going to have any fear that you're not going to have it. You're not going to have any, you know, worry that you're not good enough. You have it. Mm-hmm. It's there. All those feelings of somewhere down the road and the thinking of and what it's going to take and all the planning go away, mm-hmm. because it's there. You have it. And being able to put yourself in that state of expectancy, it's all the fear and, you know, it goes away. And again, you're not focused on, because if you're looking at something as a future wish, it's hard not to have the fear of if that wish doesn't come true.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's so, you've taught me how to do that. And I can honestly say like playing at Jones Beach Theater, like last year, that was my life dream since I was 5 years old. And I had gotten closer and closer and closer to that throughout the years. Just like that, you took me to my first concert there and I was like, this is my dream to play here. And then years later, my friend was working at Warped Tour. I got to go sit on the stage at Jones Beach while it was empty because they were doing Warped Tour in the parking lot. And her and I wrote in notebooks what we wanted, and we were staring out at the empty stadium.
Who is this?
Devin.
Oh, Devin. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
And then I got to go to a concert where I was backstage at Jones Beach, and I put my foot like on the stage while the band was playing, and I started like hysterically crying because I was like, one day maybe I'll get here. And then all of it, you know, fast forward to eventually like I was playing on that stage, but I had pictured so many times exactly what that would be like. Like it was in my head so specifically. I had it down that when I was on that stage, everyone was like, "Weren't you nervous?" And I was like, "No, I wasn't nervous. I've done it a million times."
Yeah.
Maybe a billion.
Right.
Like exactly how it happened too.
Yes.
But I mean, it's hard, I think, as when you're right brain people, like it's so hard, like, because you know, you have moments like that and they happen and so you're like, I know this is a real thing, but then you know, you procrastinate and you beat yourself up in your head and self-sabotage, and you don't let yourself do that sometimes, and it makes you feel even worse than just like taking the leap and being not so scared to just like believe that you can make these things happen for yourself.
Right. So that's why I developed over the years a way of getting myself into that state.
Okay.
Because when you look at it,
on a daily basis?
Whenever I want.
Wow. Okay.
But I have to write to do that.
Yeah. Yes, I've seen you in your notebook.
Right. So that's right. Like the right brain, right? So this is the system I came up with. So again, we're trying to give people really practical stuff here.
Yeah.
You create everything. You take that responsibility, first of all. And a lot of people are going to find that hard to believe, but that's part of the issue, right? Mm-hmm. But you need to at least kind of understand and look and take responsibility for everything in your life. And that's good and bad. And then whatever you're focusing on is what you're going to get. The key is you need to focus on what you want, not what you're afraid of. Most people automatically are going to go what they're afraid of. So how do you get yourself to go into that state? And then you need to be in the end result of the state, not the constantly waiting being, right? It's called constantly becoming. You want to become it.
Yeah.
And so how do you do that? Have you ever read a book that was so good that you were in the book at a point? Like you literally
And I was the main character.
Yes, exactly. You were that person in the book.
Yeah.
So when you write the story of your life as it is, so that's what I learned. What I sit down and do is I literally take areas of my life that are most important, right? So when you say, what do you want? First of all, it's a really big question. So the key is to write as you're there and then do it to the point where you not only see it, but you believe, oh, this is easy. This can totally happen. Like I can do this. Mm-hmm. And that's where the left brain comes in. So I'll explain to you how that works, and you know where I'm going with this. So I like to use my right brain first and write the story of my life, and I break it up into different areas that are important. So let's say it's my career, and I'm envisioning, okay, work and my career, what do I want? What do I want that to look like a year from now? And then I write it in the now. Meaning this is what's happening. I wake up and I look at this, or this is what I'm going there right now. I'm doing this right now. So I'm literally writing the story of my life a year in advance as it's happening. So I'm narrating my life at that moment, and it has all the things that I want for that year.
Yeah.
And I've already have it. And as I'm writing it, I get immersed in it to where I see it. And I feel it, and I'm in that moment at that time. And you have to write for a while to get there, and you have to be able to get yourself into that mental state.
Yeah,
but
like
you're a writer, right? So
yeah.
It's like when you're writing a song, and I've written enough books and everything that I know that I can get myself, but it's the act of doing it, of writing it, and being in that moment. And I've always told people, when you get into that point where you actually see it, where everything kind of goes away around you, and you're living in that moment that you've created and that you've written, and it's like a future self, but you're writing it as a present moment, mm-hmm. That's where manifestation lives. That's when there's like a spark that goes out in the universe. You resonate that frequency out, and you start attracting it to you. And then the more you go back and read that and get yourself back into that state, when you read it, you can go there whenever you want, right? So if you feel like disconnected from it or whatever, I go back and I read it. And as I'm reading it, it kind of puts me back into that state because I was in that state when I was writing it. So it then resonates it back, and then it gets that frequency going out again.
Yeah.
But then the aspect of it is, okay, if you're setting some really big goals or really big things, how do you make it even more real and believable? And that's where I bring the left brain in. And then I set specific number goals so that everything I do, because if you create a vague thing like I just want to feel a certain way, or I want everybody to love me, or I want this to be really successful, what does that mean? You have to be able to measure it as well, because to manage anything, you have to measure it. Now, I think if you can get yourself into that state, and if you can constantly get into your state, then you may be able to skip this thing if you're clear enough. But for me, I found setting real goals and numbers, and then you break those numbers down to their smallest constituents so that you end up having a yearly, monthly, weekly, daily number goal that you can measure. And this is how I run my life, and this is how I run any business that I'm a part of. I mean, if you came into my practice at any day and age, and you could ask anybody that works with me, and we have specific daily goals in 10 key areas of the practice. And it's not about the numbers. It's about that allows me to constantly measure what we're doing, but also you set a really big goal for the year. And if you just look at that goal, it can be overwhelming. But if you break it down to its smallest constituent and you look at it, like, let's say somebody says, I want to lose 60 pounds in a year. That can sound like daunting for anybody, right?
Yeah.
I mean, now with Ozempic, maybe not so much. But if you set that as a goal, it can kind of seem, wow, right?
Yeah.
But if you break that down, it ends up being like, something like 5 pounds a month.
Don't ask Dyscalculia over here to do the math for you.
It's 5 pounds a month. So if I said to somebody, if somebody thought about, can you lose 60 pounds in a year? Most people would be like, oh my God, 60 pounds in 1 year? And then if you go, could you lose 5 pounds in a month? Yeah. Break that down even more. It's less than a pound a week. Could you reasonably drop less than a pound a week, do you think?
Yeah.
Anybody would say, for the most part, go, yeah, that's totally doable. And now you're like, oh, I can do this. Mm-hmm. And now it adds that belief.
So that's the left brain side of it, is what you're saying, is like writing down specific numbers.
Specific numbers and goals.
Sticking that to them.
And sticking to them and coming up with a plan, like a strategy. Like if I said to you, okay, if you wanted to lose, less than a pound a week, how would you go about it? What would be, let's say, the top 3 things you would need to do? And let's say you're starting from scratch. You're not doing anything.
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah. What would somebody do? Like
lower your calorie intake, go for more walks, or like add in 10,000 steps a day in the mornings before you go to work.
That's one thing.
Lower your calorie intake.
Okay, it's a little vague. How about if you look at how many calories you currently intake and you set a specific number of calories so that you could literally calculate out, like, what would it take for me if I eat this amount of calories compared to what I typically, and if I did that, what percentage of weight would I lose? And you could literally do that as a formula.
This is already giving me anxiety, but that's my own.
What is the anxiety part? Because of the left brain part of it?
I think so, because remember, so my dad does these manifestation things with me every year, and I like kind of throw a hissy fit as if I'm in like 5th grade. It's actually very odd behavior, but I always either end up hysterically crying.
You're much easier at 6 years old.
I have like a full panic attack every time we do it. Luckily this year we didn't do it the way that we normally do, which is us going on like a 10-mile run, and like I can barely breathe because we're running so fast. And then on top of that, he's asking me all my goals and all the specifics and the numbers, which has done wonders. Actually, every single time we do that, I like see all the things that we talked about happen. But in the moment, I can't breathe for multiple reasons. But this year when we did it, remember I had a panic attack again. We did it out east. It's the numbers.
The numbers part. And so
I shouldn't behave that way.
I get that. And I'm telling you, for me, that's what works, because I've always thought that when I break the number down, it makes it, once it really becomes, I look at it and go, oh, I know I can do this. This is, whereas if there's any sort of vague doubt in my mind, even if I've seen it and I've written it down, but if there's this vague doubt, like, wow, that's a big goal. So it's really, for me, that my own. But the fact is that if you're able to write and get in that state and really see it happening and believe it in that moment, you don't need to do the number part. You really don't. And as I told you, you don't actually have to really know how it's going to happen. And that's an important thing too, because I've told you that. And remember, Isaac Wade wrote about this, that, a lot of people sit there and go, well, I don't know how this is going to happen. It doesn't sound possible. Like when we were doing the run one time, you were like, I need a producer and I can't afford a producer. And there's no way I'm going to get anyone to produce this. And it doesn't happen. And I told you, you don't need to know that.
Yeah.
You just need to know what you really want and be in that moment. Like seeing yourself on stage at Jones Beach. And in that moment, you're on that stage. And there's a party that was on that stage because you had recorded music that had gotten you on that stage. And you know what I mean? So
yes. Yeah, I got the producer that at the time when we went on that run and I was hysterically crying because I didn't know how I would get there. You were like, just relax. Just like say what you want out loud. What are you so freaking scared of? So I was like, I need a producer. But guess what? I can't afford a producer and I don't know anyone. And somehow, I don't know, within like 2 years, I moved down to Nashville, got my whole album produced by...
And who is your producer?
Zach Brown.
Yeah, duh.
But that all, at the time, none of that was anywhere remotely tangible.
You didn't have to know that, although we had written that text that you showed me in 2018, right?
Yeah.
So before that, was it before that or after that, I think? I don't remember. Maybe it was right after that. So I think run? Yeah. After that run, I think I was going to be doing something and I wrote you a text saying, hey, why don't we manifest that Zach Brown actually produces your album? And you wrote like, hell yeah, let's do it. And so I said, okay, I'll get an image of that in my head and you got an image of your head. And
this is a true story.
Yeah.
Makes me feel like a little like creepy now, but.
Why is it?
Well, because now he's like my actual friend, but I just really liked his music, so I was like, that would be sick. But
yeah, no, I mean, you respected him as somebody in music and producer, and you knew him, and I knew him, and it was somebody that made it somewhat real because that was like, the ultimate of what it could be, and that's kind of the point as well. Is that if the numbers part gets you, to me. When I write the numbers down, that makes it even more real for me and more solid. And it also gives me a way of measuring if there's anything else I can do to get that, to move towards that. Because for me, having a plan of, translating that into then, okay, what do I need to do to get that? So those are the three questions for me. What do I want? Why do I want it? Because the purpose is important too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But you can have both of those fulfilled if you really write it in a creative story-like way with passion and where you're writing the story. And it's your life story that you're literally writing. It's the future self that you're writing as a present self. And when you write that, you literally see it and then you're in that story. And then in that, you're also putting a purpose, right? There's a purpose to it, like how you feel or what you do or the difference it's going to make in the world or its difference it's going to make to other people, because that should be part of the story. It's not just, you have to write the story with some passion and some feeling and that type of thing.
What's number 3?
What do I need to do to get it? So those are the action steps
Okay.
that I want to take. Now, again, you don't even have to know what those action steps are, but if you really know what you want, and when you come up with the goals, then what happens is the action steps come about. And that's what I just did with you, right? When I said to you, if you wanted to lose 60 pounds, let's say in a year, and you
I don't want. If you guys aren't watching, I'm not losing 60 pounds.
You don't know. God forbid. No, I'm just using that as a number and a big number that for a lot of people would seem, high.
Yeah.
If you wanted to, it could be anything. It could be, again, I want to make $1 million in a year.
Yeah.
And then you look at it and say, okay, well, if you break that down, how much would that be in a day? Or maybe it's just $100,000 in a year. That sounds like a huge number to most people. And if you break that down, on a monthly, weekly, daily basis, it doesn't sound so bad. And then once you have that and you have that number, then you start to think, okay, so what would I need to do to get that? Like, what would you need to do? Like you saying, well, maybe 10,000 steps, or maybe calculating out my calories.
Yeah.
Or maybe I need to buy running shoes or walking shoes because I don't even have that. Or I know me and I need one of my friends to do this with me. Or, let's say you want to make a certain amount of money and I don't know, I need to reach out to somebody who maybe can help me find a job, or maybe I reach out, find somebody who's an investment guru that I know who can show me how to, take the money that I currently make and invest it in a way in Bitcoin, whatever it is. The point is the action steps come naturally. And sometimes the only action step is find somebody who's an expert and ask them what to do.
Yeah.
But, it's really the first two parts are the most important, really, to create that. So for me, the right brain part is writing the story, writing where that is, and getting myself into that moment. Because as you said, most people just trying to do it on your own, just trying to get into that happy state.
Yeah.
And imagine I am standing on a stage with a Grammy in my hand, right? Most people might find that very difficult to get into that state.
Well, speaking of getting into a state, I feel like that's also like an extra step of it, is that because I've always found this fascinating since you told it to me, but I also think it's very helpful, is like, also kind of the meditation part of it, which I know, just like actually getting yourself mentally into that state. And there was a time when I first moved to Nashville, and it was like, I've talked about this slightly on the podcast before, but that I was in like a really depressed time right before I moved to Nashville, and I didn't have anything going for me. And every day I would go on these like kind of manifestation walks, but I was like kind of meditating on the walks. Like, and I would this sounds crazy, but I would envision like a white light coming out of like my third eye kind of. And I know when you first wake up in the morning, I'm pretty sure you're in like theta state, right?
Yes.
And I got myself to a point where, because I know that affects your subconscious when you're like just coming out of sleep, you're in theta state, so you're not like fully online yet. And so the things you tell yourself in that in between like really stick in your subconscious. And I got myself like so on a pattern of like, I would wake up and like before I was fully awake, I was like, I would say all the things I wanted, and I would like literally see a white light in the corner. And then I kind of fell out of that because I got like depressed again or something, but I'm trying to get myself back to that. But I'm sure you see on like when you do EEGs and stuff on people's brains that what states they get into.
Actually, here's a cool story about the theta state. Thomas Edison,
the
famous inventor, created,
shout out Thomas Edison,
light bulbs and everything like that. He was not nice to Nikola Tesla, but nonetheless, he did a lot of things. What Thomas Edison would do to come up with an idea or come up with an invention, or when he was working on a problem and he didn't have a solution, he would take naps every day. And he would sit up in a chair and he would hold a relatively large metal ball in his hand with a metal plate on the floor. And he would sit back in the chair, and then he'd go into this where he'd start to fall asleep. When he got into a theta state, his hand would release the ball and it would hit the plate and would wake him up. And then he would write.
Wow, that's crazy.
So that's how he would get into that creative theta state. And he said that is where he created a lot of his inventions in that, which really means he was also manifesting it in that state, right? Where he was literally, as he was writing, drawing the invention or writing it down, he was also creating it. Because that's the thing about manifestation. That's why I think writing is very important.
Yeah.
Because you start with an idea. And we can break this down even into physics things that literally, you know, what is an idea? What is a thought in your head? I mean, this is something I've literally studied, and it's really just brainwave patterns. And it's waves, essentially. And at the basic core of the universe is the wave particle theory, right? That the smallest bits of matter, like everything that makes up matter of any kind, people, you know, chairs, everything, at the lowest level, it's a particle wave, meaning that it's not really a particle, it's not really wave, it's both at the same time, and it can kind of go in and out. But at the most basic level, it's a wave of energy. And that's true. I mean, that's not something that's like, oh, you know, this is like weird stuff. This is the principles of quantum mechanics and the way the universe actually works, which means that everything that we see, anything that's in any room at any given time, at one point did not exist. And it had to exist in someone's brain as a thought first. And that thought is a pattern of waves that is unique to that particular thing. You know, someone thought of that ottoman there, and that was an image that they had in their mind, and they pictured it. And then somewhere down the way, they had to draw it or physically put it into this world, sketch it out on a computer, or take it from that pattern and literally then manifest it in the form of a drawing, a physical drawing. When you have it as an idea in your head or a story, you're taking these waves of patterns that have literally, you know, shape and a uniqueness to them, and then you're putting it down on paper, and that is literally the act of manifesting. Because now it's a story that you can read. It's a picture that you can see. It's a song that you can now sing.
Yeah.
And then you sing it, and the sound is now actually real. It's reality. And it's, again, the sound waves are just waves. So when you look at it in that way, as you create this pattern of brainwaves, which at the most basic level resonates with anything which at its most basic level is that same brainwave pattern or frequency. And then as you put that out there, you'll start to attract that to you in some way. But as we said, so anybody can manifest, meaning you have an idea in your head, you write it. You just manifested that written piece of paper is now a physical thing. You brought something that was not physical, that really was just in this kind of sub-quantum level in your brain, and now you made it physical. And that's the point, is that we're all doing that all the time. Like, people can say, I don't want to manifest, I don't believe in it. Doesn't matter whether you believe in it or not, you're doing it.
Yeah.
Your only question is, are you manifesting what you want, or are you manifesting what you're afraid of, or what other people want from you?
Mm-hmm.
Either way, you're manifesting. The fact that you think that I don't manifest, or I don't believe it, doesn't. You don't have to believe in it or not. It's going to happen. But
yeah, so you might as well be intentional about it.
Exactly. So you might as well be intentional about it. You might as well actually take control of it, because this is your life. And if there's a lot of things in your life that you don't like, you manifested it because you didn't do anything intentional. You let life just happen. And that's not a good place to be, because you leave it to randomness, or you leave it to where your brain is just going to go on its own, and it's going to go to a place of fear. That's what the right brain's going to do. It's going to look for danger. It's going to go on fear. It's going to be hyper vigilant on that. And then you're going to look for other things that are going to reinforce that, which is going to make you look at it harder, which is all just going to make it bring it to you quicker.
Yeah.
And then you're going to manifest it. And then you're going to go, life sucks. It's hard. Life is hard. It's miserable. And people are mean and things are bad. And there are some people who never live in that part, right? I don't come across a lot of mean, angry people. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I've surrounded myself, I think this is how your mother and I live. We live in a world where, life can be really nice and people can be nice and life can be great. But it's your choice on what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking to, I mean, both left and right brain people, but right brain people, I know firsthand, which is why I was saying that he has a manifestation course that I take every year. I just like scream and cry through the whole thing. But that's not because it's not amazing. It's just because I feel like as a very right brain person, the panic of like being super specific about something when like you're constantly like, you're constantly in that pattern of like, oh, I should do this, but that means I have to do this, and that means I have to do this, and then how would I be able to do that? And then like instead of just writing that down, I'm like, never mind, like whatever, freak out, procrastinate, then come to the point of time where like had I planned it out, things would be 10 times better, and now I'm depressed and now whatever. So that's all to say. The best way I think to ease yourself into something like that and make it fun, which you've tricked me into before, is like,
tricked you.
What you're like, what kind of car would you like one day? And I'm like, who cares? How would I buy a car? And you're like, that's not what I'm asking you. What would be your favorite type of car? Write that down. Write down the details of what would be inside of it. What color would it be? What would your dream house look like? Write that down, whatever. And then it kind of becomes fun. You're like, oh, God, I would own this island, like whatever. But you can do that. You can write down super specifically, kind of freely, like all of these things that your heart desires, and picture yourself there and picture yourself in that moment. And it kind of like starts to get you into that process. And like you said, once you start picturing yourself very specifically in certain situations, I think the rules of the universe is that somewhere in a parallel reality that's already happened if you can see it clearly enough. So that could be your reality. You never know.
Well, I think also it speaks to, I do believe, and from a scientific perspective, I do believe there's a universal consciousness. I kind of, in a way, believe that the universe is like one big brain. And the way I look at a brain and the way I look at the way the brain works and the neuroscience and how we synchronize different areas, and, we look at things in the universe and the way it works, it's very similar. I think the physics of how our brain works and the physics of how the universe works are pretty parallel. And it's because I believe that they work similarly. They tap into a similar force. And in that, I believe, is also a universal creativity, that there's a creative force, and that's in us. And the manifestation of that is our own imagination, that we have an imagination, that we can imagine something. And when we imagine something, it's because basically the creative force is saying, okay, that's yours. You have it. You saw it. You saw yourself having it. You imagined it. And so now it's there. It's coming.
Yeah, it's possible.
And there may be a lag time. And that's where a lot of people get lost as well, because it's like, wait a second, it didn't happen fast enough. But the way to speed that up is you, meaning that if you're thinking and wishing and dreaming, and you're saying in the future this is going to happen, then you're creating that lag time.
Yeah.
But if you are able to get into it now, but even then there's going to be a lag time to it.
Yeah, someone explained it as like when someone gets pregnant, it takes 9 months for them to actually have the baby. Like you're putting out this thing that you would like to be born in your life, but it's not going to be born tomorrow, but you put it out there and it's a real thing. And
Right.
If you keep going in that direction, it's going to appear. It just takes some time and you got to keep going.
Yeah. And I've even had women who have told me that they, wanted so badly to have a child. And then there was a moment of conception when they knew it. Like they knew, I just conceived. Now, there was no proof of that in any way. Mm-hmm. Even if they had had a blood test at that point, would it have shown any proof? And it turned out to be correct.
Yeah.
Now, did they manifest it at that moment of time in themselves? Or so, it's really fascinating stuff to look at it. And I think you can have fun with it. And I always say to anybody that even does my online, course, this is the way that I do it, and it works for me. And I've been doing it for 20, 25 years. And anything I've ever created, any books that I've written, all started with this process first. Everything, any business I've created, any new discovery, any scientific paper, it all came first. And I wrote about it. And I still do it, as you know, every year. And that works for me, but it doesn't mean it's the best way to do it.
It works for me too. I'll admit it.
It did work for you when you were 6, when you didn't think so much. But when I could trick you into believing anything I said. But yeah, but you, and I tell you all the time, look at what you've manifested. Look at what you have done. Everything you've done. And the thing about you and your career, going back to, when the first time somebody who was a really great musician, whatever, heard your music and said to you, this is for you. You should do this. The first time we had a meeting with a huge person in the music business, and you sat down on the couch, and he said, 95% of the people I see on that couch, I tell them, find a new job, find a new career, because this is not for you, and this is for you. You've never really had anybody ever really tell you, don't do this. You're not good. But you also, and you manifested that. So from the time you were a child, remember that sitting on the couch started with you as a 6-year-old child saying, that's what I want to be on that stage on Jones Beach. I want to be like what I just saw. And you saw yourself in your head doing that. All I did was kind of help focus that and help you develop a little bit of a plan in your mind as to how that was going to come about. But everything that you've done, I mean, you came down here by yourself. You knew nobody, but you knew what was going to happen, and you felt it, and you know what I mean? So at a certain point, you have to trust yourself and believe in yourself and know that you have manifested. Everything in your life you manifested, you created it, and therefore you can create anything else that you want to happen in your life. The problem is that most of us, and especially big right-brain people, believe that we also don't deserve that, or that we can create, we kind of believe that we can create the negative, but it's harder to believe that we can create the positive when one or the other is equally as possible. And
plays into the overwhelming feelings of shame and guilt. But we don't need to dive into that now. That'll be a whole nother episode for you guys. But yeah, so basically bottom line is you're constantly manifesting no matter what.
So you might as well take control of the process and bring into your life what you want.
Yeah, and give yourself permission and know that you're worthy.
And you don't always have to know how.
Yeah.
But you have to get into that state. You have to see it. You have to see what you have to know what you want. Mm-hmm. And that's the most important thing. You have to know what you want. And then if you can develop a plan to get it, that's only going to fuel that belief more. And that's, what your life can do. I mean, when I open my phone every day, I have a calendar on my phone. And every appointment is somehow tied to one of my goals of what I want. Either it's because I want to make a difference in my patients. So every patient I see is part of my goal of becoming, the best doctor, the best therapist, helping as many people as possible. And then other action steps are almost all directed towards getting me to a goal. I have a goal for my family. I have a goal for my kids and my wife and what I want it to be like. And so when I have an appointment that come down to Nashville and do a podcast with you, it's my goal because I want to be close with you and I want to share this with you and I want to share your life with you and I want to see you. And so imagine waking up and every action step that you take is towards your own individual goals. And that's what my life looks like on a day-to-day basis. And so therefore, every aspect of my life I created with intention in that way. And when you actually schedule something, that's when you almost guarantee it happening. Up until then, it's, I think I'm going to, but when you actually put it down on your calendar, that's when you fully manifest it, because now it may be in a month from now, it may be 2 months from now, but I have an appointment and it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's when it's now it's real. And that's when, ultimately taking these action steps, putting them on your calendar, actually putting a date in it, there's a time frame where I've devoted that. And that's where it's like, okay, so now I'm going to wake up, and at some point that action was thought of. It started with a thought in my head as part of a goal, so it's that process, and that's how it works for me.
Okay. Well, you heard it here, guys. You see him, he's the walking, talking example of it. So these are real life things. But okay.
First of all, you should never listen to anybody if they're not the walking, talking example.
A lot of people do. I'm pretty sure I do a lot, actually. But, yeah, don't do that too, guys. Okay, well, as always, you guys know where to send in questions. And we'll be back next time. Thanks for being here.
Okay.
Love you, Dad.
Love you, honey.